What is up, everybody, and welcome to episode 78 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Roscoe, and what an absolute fun show we have for you guys. We are going to cover the ALL Stakes Pick6 on Black-Eyed Susan Day, otherwise known as Preakness Friday. Thank you guys all so much for joining in. Greatly appreciate it. We had a pretty decent amount of people waiting to get into the show, so I greatly appreciate that as we move in to the show. As you see on the bottom side of the screen, you'll see two things. One, my email, bettinandboozin@gmail.com. Please email me with any questions, comments, or concerns that you guys have. Also, as it just went past, tomorrow, our next show is tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern, which is Howard, Pete, and Paul on episode 351 of Picks and Ponies, covering the late pick 5 for Preakness Saturday. Guys, we have Preakness Day covered like a glove. Also, not only do we have a show tomorrow night, you guys will probably see a show coming soon, either covering, most likely covering the undercard stakes. There's 4 undercard stakes that are outside of the late pick 5 for Saturday. We might have you covered on those. Keep a lookout after this show for that tape show. Anyway, guys, please go down below the video player. Please hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. It's the 2 easiest and 2 best ways to help out our channel. Not only does it show us that you guys are enjoying the content, we're almost to 4,000 subscribers, guys. We're pretty much on the road there. We're at 3,750 last time I checked. So please continue to hit the like button, hit subscribe as Triple Crown season continues to move along. Like I said, and it's the easiest way and best way to help out our channel. And for that, we thank you. Guys, I want to talk about something real quick here, and we'll touch on it a little bit farther into the episode as we go through. But a really good friend of the podcast, Matt Miller, if you guys have not seen, or you guys don't follow us on Twitter, he came out with a brand new book called A Better Way of Thinking, and I'm putting it up on the screen right now. Master the Odds with The Better Way of Thinking. Again, of course, by our good friend Matt Miller. You could see abetterwayofThinking.com is where you end up getting that. And a funny thing I found out is, even if you type better wrong, if you just type it like BETTER, shout out to Matt being the lawyer, it still takes you to the same exact place. So it looks like he's thought of everything. But guys, when I mean that Matt Miller has literally changed my entire betting and just honestly life outlook, that would be an understatement. 2 years ago, as you guys know, this podcast was started, Bettin N Boozin was started just over a year, almost a year and a half ago, which is actually even nuts that I'm saying it out loud. In that time, I've learned so much, picked up so much, not only from Howard, Pete, Paul, even the guys, Patrick, Charlie, Noah. Those guys have all taught me something as well. Just, you continue to evolve and learn in this game, and no person has helped me learn and evolve more than Matt Miller. If you guys want to get the book for yourselves, again, I'll put the banner back up here. That's A Better Way of Thinking.com. It talks about life, gambling, betting strategy, tournament strategy. Literally, it's just a great book. I know Howard's read it, has nothing but good things to say. Even Emma, the beautiful Emma, has read it, and she said it's a fantastic book. So please go abetterwayofThinking.com to support Matt Miller. And obviously, I have it right here. It's down over there, but I'll pull it out if I need to. But yeah, guys, go abetterwayofThinking.com. Guys, we're going to run through real quick here. Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Anchor, of course, where you can find every episode of Bettin N Boozin and Picks and Ponies, and even Horsin around on audio platforms, wherever you get your podcasts, mainly Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchors, where we post every single episode. Guys, the Power Picks, I mean, it's literally, it's up to, I believe it's $2.20, but the Picks is almost $600 now. So I have to change that. Guys, I mean, our Power Picks have been, like I said, without sounding, like I'm boasting, they've been very, very good. Like our Derby weekend, we had a ton of prices. Last weekend with the Peter Pan, if you guys cashed on an Antiquarian, that was the play of the day for Aqueduct. If you guys saw that and you guys cashed on that, congratulations. How was my top pick, Howard's top pick? He put it in the blog, and obviously it did very well. So please, it's one of the cheapest and one of the most affordable tip sheets on all of YouTube, and one of the most profitable. Is we're over $2.20, way in the positive for over 2.5 years of doing what used to be called the Race Day blog. Now that's called the Power Picks. Patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast to get your hands on those. Also, down below in the description is where you can click the link as well. And if you want to see any previous editions of the Power Picks or just want to learn anything about us, HHHRacingPodcast.com is, of course, the place to do that. Guys, I'll get to the chat in a second. I see a lot of people. Thanks, guys, all so much for joining the show and chatting already. Appreciate it. If you guys are not familiar, if you guys are on YouTube or you guys are next, come on over to YouTube, youtube.com/HHH Racing Podcast. And on the right side of the screen, you can comment in the live chat. And these PPs have been on for a long time. So if you guys have opinions on these races, please put them in the live chat. We would love to discuss. But guys, let's bring on my co-host here, and then we'll get right into it. We have 6 races to cover for you guys, and of course the All Stakes late pick 6 on Friday. Returning from a little bit of a hiatus from the East Coast of New Jersey, Patrick Kunsel and there it is. See, that's what I'm talking about. From the Ohio State University, now of course in the Chicagoland area, Charlie Freeman, and West Coast bias himself, still stuck at the University of Kentucky, Noah Maher. Boys, what's going on?
Nothing much. Glad to be back.
Can't believe we have the whole gang.
I know. How about this? We got 4. We got 4 across the board finally. So it seems our first time in forever. So it should be a really good show. Obviously, we have a lot of agreeing viewpoints and a lot of disagreeing viewpoints. Charlie, also, this came in yesterday. What do you think about that?
I'm just happy it's not a Caleb Williams jersey, but no, I'm actually debating between getting.
Wait, what jersey is that?
Between getting it's Romo Dunze.
It's a Roma Dunze jersey.
I'm debating between getting him or Keenan Allen. I don't know which one I'm going to get yet, but
Keenan Allen is really a good one too. But it came on today, and obviously the schedule is coming out tonight, so have to. Yeah,
that's why I went with Saints going 17-0. That's why I went with Saints going 17-0.
Yeah,
the schedule coming out.
Yeah, I'll see you first week. Anyway, Katie is here, of course. Thanks so much, Katie, for joining the show. TC Markham is here. Thanks so much, TC, for joining the show. He says, I hope to hear about some of the Maryland-based horses that seem to infiltrate these days and the late stakes races. TC, whether we have them or not, I'll definitely be able to touch on a few that I think are pretty interesting. I'm sure the other guys will as well. Shout out to Ben's Cat. Yeah, that horse, we were talking about it before the show, ended up winning 5 Jim McKay turf sprints, including 4 in a row. And that was still before my time. But yeah, shout out to Ben's Cat. That is one, obviously, who goes through like that. Christopher, of course, is here. Chris, thanks so much for joining the show. I was laughing because you couldn't get Baffert in the chat. Kept doing Jimmy Buffett. It's 5 o'clock somewhere as I crack open a beer. But shout out to Chris. Thanks so much for joining the show, man. Greatly appreciate it. Let's see who else is here. John Judge. I don't think I've seen that name before. Absolutely, my friend. Let's light the candle. Thanks so much, man, for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. And like I said, Terry Frank is here. My book was delivered yesterday. Absolutely, Terry. That's awesome. Keep it up. Tanner Hawkins, of course, is here. And the boss and everyone else, and they're all laughing in the chat. Rob Ben is here drinking Old Milwaukee Red Eyes. You got some heart, Rob. That's the one beer I could never do. In Old Milwaukee.
Comment in the chat by the boss.
Best.
Oh God, here we go.
Oh, I know. Yeah, boss is going with his puns. I kind of, when the teacher comes out, I kind of tend to ignore it. And Mike Saletta, of course, is here, man. What's up? Boozin Gents. Thanks so much, Mike, for joining the show. Guys, let's get right into this here. Taking 10 minutes of their time. Race number 8 is the start of the All Stakes Pick 6, and it's the DuPont Distaff Stakes. As I bring up the Equibase right now, it's a field of 8 with the morning line favorite at 9-5 for the number 8. Shotgun Hottie for Paco Lopez and Cherie DeVoe, who is actually bringing a pretty decent amount of horses over for these races, and I think she has a pretty good chance in a lot of these races. And I'll bring up the picks right now. See, 3 of us are going with the number 8, Shotgun Hottie. I'm sure a lot of us are seeing one thing, which we'll touch on obviously in a second. But Patrick, the odd man out, my friend, coming back to the show and right off the chopping block, you were going to go first with the number 4, Musical Mischief, the third choice for Johnny V and Michael McCarthy.
Well, first off, I think we learned what we needed to know about Julia Shining last out when we were all at Keeneland, and half of our group got knocked out of the tournament that they were playing in that weekend. But Musical Mischief, I just think she should have won that day. Michael McCarthy came back and said he doesn't know how she ended up losing that day. It was that horse rode a rail that was just unbelievable. I just think we're going to get her best effort. I look for her to be forward. The distance, I really don't think should be a problem. And has, an impressive win at this distance back in of last year in November at Churchill. So, winning by 11 lengths. So I just think if we could get that effort forwardly placed, Shotgun Hottie, she's solid, has good form, comes out of the apple blossom. And I'd like to hear what you guys have to think about her.
Well, no, I'll go to you first, and then Charlie, you can piggyback off anything he says. Looking at the time form here, guys, you can see the 4 is up there, but Shotgun Hottie, I thought, kind of had a pretty decent pace scenario in her own right, because Musical Mischief doesn't mind going to the lead, but I think she does her best running just sitting off the lead. So I thought that kind of left open a little lane for Shotgun Hottie. Noah, what did you? Is that kind of the vein you were thinking on, or did you just think that she's kind of this is a little bit easier spot than what she's been running in?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. To Patrick's point, I almost put Musical Mischief on top just because I thought that was a winning effort last time, and that was a little bit of a brutal beat. But going back to Shotgun Hottie, it's funny when you look at her PP, she kind of did the same thing she did last year, where at the beginning of her 4-year-old campaign, she ran okay, but not great. She did have one win in March of 2023. But I think she's going to do something similar here where she's kind of thrown in the 3 where she's run okay, but not great. But considering the company that she's run against, I mean, what are the horses that she lost to in the Apple Blossom in here? I mean, Adair Manor is, odds on at least in a race like this. And, going back to what I said, she had those 3 races. And then in late summer of last year, she got really good. So I think she's one of those horses where when she takes some time off, it just kind of takes her a little bit of time to get back to her best form, and I think she's going to have her best foot forward here.
Charlie, I'll go to you next, and then you can continue to go on. As you know, I actually have the same picks in this race, so feel free to talk about your underneath horses as well. But, yeah, I don't disagree with Noah, and I just think, that this is a little bit of a drop for her, and I think she could get back to winning ways here.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think she needs the lead by any means, but I kind of saw, and I'm glad you showed the pace projection for our audience, but that was kind of what I keyed in on as well. That's why I tossed the one Julia Shining, a horse that is a pretty deep closer, and I don't think there's going to be much to close into. I just think, honestly, for Shotgun Hottie, there's multiple different ways this horse can win without necessarily having to necessarily be at her best or have to work that hard for it. I think she could naturally sort of inherit the lead from the outside and set reasonable fractions. I don't think Paco would really ask much at all. Or if for whatever reason, maybe they decide with the 4 in a race where, again, there isn't much early speed, maybe the 4 does sort of get on with it a little bit. I think Shotgun Hottie, you can see in the past, has had some races where she's been like a length or 2 off and then has gone by to win. So I don't really think there's I think there is a lot of versatility with this horse. I don't think she needs the lead but could inherit it. But outside of the pace play, like Noah said, I mean, if you look at who this horse has run against, it doesn't remotely compare to what you see in this field. And the other thing you keyed in on, which is what I was going to bring up, is you look, obviously, that 81, if you were like, oh, maybe the horse is starting to regress a little, was off a massive layoff and then has steadily just continued to improve and start to get back into form. And I think he nailed it right on the head. This just looks like a horse that, again, naturally off a big layoff, maybe needs some time. And we kind of talk about how some horses maybe need 1, sometime even 2. And maybe this is just one of those solid horses that just needs those 2 or 3 races before she gets right back to that form. And I don't even think she needs, quite honestly, a 98 or 96. If she gets close to that form, that's really good. I won't really touch on the 4 because Patrick and Noah touched on it. I saw the same thing. And then went real quick on the 5, who I have in 3rd, and so does Noah. I was just looking for someone that could maybe pick up the pieces to at least get in the money. I think this horse will probably sit a similar trip to Julia Shining. I'd just rather take a horse that's 8-1 with Flavian Pratt aboard and take a chance than a 5-2 for my 3rd place spot.
Well, and Patrick, that'll lead us right into this. You kind of hinted on it a little bit. The divorce papers are out and are out for a lot of people. Christopher says, if Julia wins, I lose. I mean, a lot of people were high on her last year. Obviously, the number wasn't too good, but she won the Demoiselle and then ended up coming back strong in the Ashland. And obviously, the Alabama was nowhere and ended off that campaign and with a decent run in the Comely to Raging Sea, who obviously came back to run very well at Keeneland this year. So I think that last race kind of solidified it for people, although it was off a pretty decent layoff.
Yes, it was. And that's the thing, that she has going for her, because her numbers do fit in this spot. So that's, that's what's a little scary. And you don't want to really doubt Pletcher. The only other horse I want to hit on is the 2, Lacey Be Good. She's rattled off, 5 straight wins now.
Yep.
That's impressive in itself. Competition hasn't been great. And I saw Tom Amos say, I think it was either today or yesterday, that they'll just be happy with the placing. They know she needs to improve, and this is a huge step up. So I think she's got 5 wins in a row, like I said, and that's impressive. But this is a tough spot.
Yeah, I mean, it's 5 wins in a row, and the thing we always love to say, right, is people love to bet the ones. So when they see this horse, all she does is win. This horse just inherently is going to take a little bit more money, but just on numbers alone, she's a little slow, and she's going to have to improve. And she hasn't really shown that, this campaign where 80, 80, 79, 80, while still winning, and some by completely wide margins. Mm-hmm. Just on numbers alone, she's going to have to improve. But again, 5 wins in a row is no short of anything. Yeah, the only thing is that I wouldn't throw Julia Shining out completely. I mean, she had her numbers, that not last number off a 6-month layoff completely fits in a race like this. Maybe it's a little slow, but minor placings where she's going to be sitting a decent stalking trip with not a whole lot of speed. I'd rather have her than a lot of horses coming from the back, I guess. But to Noah's point and Charlie's point, I think 5-2 is a little short on her to take her anywhere towards the top for me. But if she ends up winning and improving in this race, I wouldn't say I would be completely surprised by any means. But I just think she needs to kind of show that type of running again for me to, again, believe in what she can do. Obviously, being a full sister to Malathot is obviously nothing short of great in the breeding sense, but she kind of has to show that coming back to this race. I'm going 8-4-1. Patrick's going 4-8-1, and Charlie and Noah are both going 8-4-5. Guys, let's move on to race number 9 here, and this is our first turf race of the sequence that we're going to be covering. It is the Hilltop Stakes, 100,000 for going a mile on the turf. Draws a field of 10, and the morning line favorite is a pretty good one, I think. In number 6, She Feels Pretty. Johnny V. Sharitovo again hopping aboard here, coming first time off of the Breeders' Cup last November. So it is a pretty decent layoff. I'll talk about, I kind of tilted my hand a little bit. I'll talk about why I like her. Charlie also has her on top. Patrick's going, again, a little bit off the rail, off the wavelength here with number 4, Waves of Mischief. I have in 3rd. Charlie has in 3rd as well. Charlie, very astute picking, by the way. Noah, going with number 2, Royal Winter. Charlie, we'll start with us since we have the morning line favorite. Again, She Feels Pretty, coming off the Breeders' Cup. I'm going to show this replay because I'm sure since we've all become replay watchers in our own right, I think it's a very good one to start watching with, to start off with She Feels Pretty.
Yeah, well, with She Feels Pretty, this is a horse that I know all too well. We were at this race at the Breeders' Cup, and it was certainly tough for me to watch. This was one of my plays of the day on that day. I loved this horse. I actually had, I think, was it the 11 in this race,
yes,
right? Yeah,
right here.
And I had the 11-6 exact as well. So to see Hard to Justify beat my 2 horses hurt. But look, I really liked what I saw in the Woodbine effort. I thought that the 20-point jump from the 65 to 85 was actually really accurate to me. I saw a completely different horse second time out and switching to the mile. So I thought, this is an inexperienced horse, but in a good way, one that has plenty of room to grow. And I thought kind of show that this horse, she really likes the mile. And I don't think the effort, last time out ended up going off as the favorite was bad by any means. I mean, narrowly lost and was right there the whole way, sat a nice trip and just didn't quite have enough to beat a Hard to Justify.
I'll tell you what, sorry to interrupt you. I'll tell you what, I mean, she's still 4 wide. I mean, she's been 4 wide this entire time around the first turn. And as I'll skip ahead to the stretch, I mean, she's still wide. Like, she's still 3 and 4 wide the whole time, which Hard to Justify sat to the inside of her. And God, I cannot remember who this 6 is. If it's dodging. Porta Fortuna.
Yeah.
But again, 2 really good trips, and she only loses by what? Half length, and she's 4 deep the entire race until the stretch. I mean, that's a huge effort in my eyes. And I know, and being the favorite, obviously she was very well backed, but I just wanted to kind of talk through that replay because being 4 deep that whole time at Santa Anita and still finishing really pretty well, I thought that was a very good way to start off here.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the only question for me, and I'm sure people in our chat, and I'm sure, Patrick probably had as well for not having this horse on top, and same with Noah, is obviously the layoff. I mean, again, the effort obviously was very solid, but
Right.
it has been since November. And we talk about this all the time, that we don't always know when these horses run in big races like in Breeders' Cup weekend, how they'll come back. If She Feels Pretty comes back in her form and what we saw last time out, or even takes a step forward, I think she'll be pretty damn tough to beat in the spot, and the morning line's accurate. But again, Patrick, I know Kyle was going to ask you, so I'm curious what made you put her only in second?
Yeah, I think there's a mixture of two things. One, Sherry DeVoe did say she could be coming back maybe a week or two short, but like logical spot, which this is. I mean, the caliber of horse that she has here is very high, obviously. You showed the replay. This horse doesn't run third. That horse ran huge that day. So, but to go to the 4, Waves of Mischief, I was really impressed that day. Winning a maiden race at Keeneland's impressive, but the way the horse did it, and then Brendan Walsh did say, this horse can show a lot of improvement second time out, and I think that's what the horse is going to do. Should be the time form wise. I haven't taken a look, but this horse should be more forwardly placed, I would think.
Yep. Sure, right
I just it's going to say mid pack, which I think is impressive. Like great connections, and should be there. This is another fun race, because if the 6 doesn't really come back to her form right away, this I think could be wide open, especially with the 2 for Graham Motion, who's run impressively 2 times out, who I know Noah has on top.
No, go right into it with number 2, Royal Winter.
Well, first I'll talk about She Feels Pretty, because I think this might be a prep for something over the summer. Mm-hmm. So while I respect her, I'm going to try to beat her in this spot. And I actually like Royal Winter quite a bit. I thought she got a little bit of a sneaky trip in the last race. Kyle, if you want to pull up that replay and fast forward to about the far turn, Royal Winter was a 5 in this race. And then the winner, Style Points, is the 9. Who is a very talented horse, a stakes caliber horse, who is also coming out of the Florida Oaks, who we've seen some very talented horses, Austere and such.
She's right here.
But she has to go 4 wide. Jorge Ruiz decides to go 4 wide, while Joelle on the 9 just basically rides up the rail, a perfect ride. Meanwhile, Royal Winter's stuck 4 wide. And then as they kind of come down the stretch, she's already lost a length or 2 of ground, and she tries to make it up, but in the end, it's a little too late.
I thought, and the live, I thought she won. Honestly,
yeah, no,
it was a bad
the
bob.
The bob did not help her either.
Didn't you get also a nasty text too, Noah, about this horse?
A nasty text
about this ride by Ruiz that day?
Oh yeah, I wasn't happy, but I'm gonna back her again anyways. But last thing I'll say, and it's funny that some people mentioned in the chat the weather. I actually did some research. So the sire Demarchelier, I don't know how to pronounce.
I think it's Demarchelier.
That's not my forte, as we know on the show. He actually was 3 for 4 in his lifetime and won the Grade 3 Pennine Ridge at Belmont on a good turf course. And then moving over to the Dam Quiet Royal, she actually won a race called the Reluctant Guest, which is at none other than Arlington Park.
Yes, sir.
On a yielding turf course. So if you're worried about the weather, I don't think you need to worry about it with her. You've seen she can be tactical. You've seen she can come from off of it. If She Feels Pretty's not ready, I like Royal Winter a lot.
I don't disagree with you. Obviously, I have the horse in second. I think if anyone else besides She Feels Pretty is not ready, I think Royal Winter definitely has the best shot to beat her. There's one thing I want to touch on that someone put in the chat. Then we'll move on to the next race. Expatriate. My gosh, Expatriate is the Chad Brown here. A little slow on the number, albeit she did close into a hot, cold pace last time. Just got up by a neck on a Gulfstream turf course, which is not very favorable to closing like that. So I think Expatriate. Noah, you also have the horse in third. But that was the horse that I was between Waves of Mischief and Expatriate. I think Waves of Mischief got a perfect trip last time. Granted, made it herself, but I got a perfect trip last time, and I would need to see it again personally for me to be able to back a horse like that. Expatriate's kind of that same thing. It was between the 3 or 4 for me in third. Last thing we'll touch on, guys, before we move on, is Christopher said, hard to justify, just ran such a horrible race in her comeback on Derby weekend. Katie does say that it was due to the turf because it was so, it was a bog, basically. It was a yielding turf. You can see the buyer figures here, but you can see everyone else. I mean, hard to justify is really the only one that has run bad out of this race. Austere came back running decent in the Florida Oaks and just got slammed in the Appalachian early. Buku is a horse that came out of there, obviously came back to win the Appalachian and didn't run that bad in the Edgewood, but couldn't beat dynamic pricing that day. I got to give myself credit where credit's due once in a while on this show. Life's an Audible came back to improve completely off of that race in all three of her starts. Lawn came back to win a stakes race down the hill at Santa Anita. So there's a lot of horses that came out of that race. I get, Porta Fortuna, like as you mentioned, it's just there's a lot of horses in there that came back well. So I think just basing it off of hard justifies effort last time, which very well could have been to the turf, I feel like it's just a little bit of an undersight in being what looks like on paper is a pretty good race. If she's ready, I think she's the winner. If she is just a little bit short, Patrick, as you touched on, I think for me, it's number 2, Royal Winter, but Patrick also loves the number 4, Waves of Mischief. I'm going 6-2-4. Patrick's going 4-6-2. Charlie's going 6-2-4, and Noah's going 2-6-3. Guys, moving on to race number 10. It is the Miss Preakness Stakes as I switch over the Equibase right now. Grade 3, 6 furlongs for 3-year-old fillies. Draws a full field of 12, with the Morningland favorite being number 3. You Almost Had Me for Gaffleone and Brad Cox. Second choice is your 9-2, number 4, Luis Saez for Jorge Delgado, the number 4, Launch. And third choice is shared between the number 1, Mystic Lake for Pratt and Safi, and the number 5, Lady Moscato for Frankie Dettori and the coach Dwayne Lucas. Guys, switching the picks right now, all of us are going with the number 3, You Almost Had Me. And I'll tell you what, I don't know if anyone else felt this way. If this horse is 2-1, it might be time to bring out the deep part of my wallet, because that is going to be a rough.
Wasn't she favored over Denim and Pearls last out too?
That she was, and we'll get to it right now. Charlie, I'll let you talk first. Number 3, You Almost Had Me. Cox, for Cox and Gaffleone, your 2-1 favorite.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised you didn't go to Noah first on this horse to see what his insider thoughts might be, because he might have more information on this horse than me. So I'll let him do the most of it. But yeah, for me, to be honest, I was joking around with Noah, before we went live, talking about if I was going to go with the 3 or the 4 potentially. And he cut me off very quickly and asked me, do you want to pick the winner or do you want to be different? And I said, that's fair enough. So I stuck with his 3 on top. I mean, look, this horse obviously had a bunch of solid efforts in the past, came off a pretty decent layoff running against Denim and Pearls, who obviously didn't have a good effort Derby weekend, but nonetheless ran a monster effort that day and is still overall a great horse. You can't look at one bad effort and just write that horse off. But look, You Almost Had Me against this field really should win comfortably, realistically. The more I looked into it and discussed with Noah, I kind of don't think it's, the bias. I truly do see where he's coming from. I think, You Almost Had Me can kind of work out different trips, could go towards the lead, could sit a length or 2 off. Doesn't really make a difference. And honestly, I think getting that second race off the layoff will be huge for her. She's working forwardly, gets Gaffleone again as well. And yeah, I just think kind of overwhelms this field. And honestly, the more I looked into Launch, obviously you see the win over R. Harper Rose, who was once kind of well looked upon to maybe get you excited, but that was also a 3-horse field and hasn't really beat anyone else, as at least for me, the only other horse that had a chance. So this 3 does look pretty overwhelming.
No, I'll go to you. Resolute Racing, my friend. Do you have anything for us, or do you just like the horse in general? Because, I mean, the one thing that you and I talked about was the running lines of this horse.
Yeah, I mean, when she's at her best, I think she's head and shoulders above who she's facing on Friday. I personally think the Beaumont was a little bit of it just wasn't her day, and the fact that it was Denim and Pearl's day, because we saw how impressive she was that day. With that being said, it was her first start since the end of November, so she should be ready to go here. It also was at 7, and you look, and some of her best races, she hasn't lost at anything at 6.5 or shorter. Yep. So it just seems like that 6.5 is her wheelhouse. And like I said, if she runs back to those races at the end of her 2-year-old year, I think we might see something special.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you by any means. Obviously, losing to Vivi's Dream last year, who was very good with her 2-year-old campaign, and then Denim and Pearls, just one-turn specialist. Obviously, didn't show it on Derby Day, but that race at Keeneland was very, very good from her. I just think if you almost Hammy returns to any type of form that she had at the end of last year, second off the layoff, Brad Cox, Gaff Leone, I just think everything is pointing to go here for you almost had me. No, I'm going to stick with you here. Someone in the chat said the number 9 Cap Classique was interesting. This is a Pennsylvania, Maryland type, obviously for the Russells, who are very well based and very well meant out there. It was, I believe, who was Rob N put the 9 interests me. So I wanted to go to you here. What'd you like most about Cap Classique?
Yeah, Rob's a smart guy. Rob and I would get along very well. But with Cap Classique, just with some of these horses that are kind of middling prices, like some of that we got in the mix, either the 4 or the 5, I just was not thrilled with any of them. So Cap Classique is a horse that has been off for a while, and she does seem a little slow, but she's a really nice closer. I think her races visually are a little more impressive than they are on paper. And I think, there's a decent amount of speed in here, and I don't think it's very good speed. So I think from a pace standpoint, you almost had me. He's probably just going to sit right off and go by. But if some of these horses duel, I wouldn't be surprised if these Russell connections come flying at 12, 15 to 1.
Yeah, and like we talk about, there's always these local connections that end up running well. There's always a few on these types of days that beat out the Invaders. Cap Classique could be the one for you. Patrick, you have a horse that someone else just brought up in the chat. John Rice says the number 7, Carmelina, who we have in second. This is another one that's kind of the local base connections for Robert Reed Jr.
Yeah, Butch Reed has actually been doing really well of late. The barn's been on fire, winning a couple stakes races at Aqueduct.
Yep.
And
right.
This horse, speed. You look at the pace projector. This is going to be a fast pace. I don't know if she's going to be able to hold on, but I just look at her last 2 races. She does not want to go that distance, and I kind of tossed the last race out, and I think that she can, kind of take them a long ways away. Like I think she's, going to be very fast in this spot, and if she can somehow, wire the field, she's going to be a price. So I'm going to try to get her in exactas with the 3, and hopefully she can hold on. But this is obviously a step up in class, and I think if it's not the 3, it's anybody.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you by any means there. Charlie, we're on the same horses. Nothing too creative. Number 4, Launch, is one that likes to go to the lead, has sat before, which is kind of the angle I was playing off with Launch. And the number 5, Lady Moscato for the coach, was another one that can get a stalking trip. Maybe a little bit over her head in the 8 bells last time. Obviously, a little bit easier spot here for that one.
Yeah, and I talked about Launch a little bit. I mean, look, this is an improving horse. I like that they're sticking with 6 furlongs because even though the horse won at 6.5, it was really because the horse just beat no one. It did not look like she wanted to go that long. I think 6 is the right spot. And yeah, I mean, look, they set a crazy hot pace despite it only being a 3-horse race and still managed to go by R. Harper Row. So that horse certainly has a chance. I just think the question is going to be the trip because, as you mentioned, obviously sitting is possible, but you don't usually bring Luis Saez on to sit. Yeah, so I feel like that horse will probably go in a race with a lot of speed. But I still think the horse could class up to finish second. In terms of Lady Moscato, I'm really just keen in on the efforts 2 and 3 back where you saw this horse was continuing to improve. And, obviously 2 back was only, $1.90 was a very short price, but still went on to win by 8 lengths and set a nice time. And I agree with you. I just think, honestly, the bells was just them being like, this horse had a monster effort and is improving. Why not try to throw her in there and see what happens? She was 22 to 1. Nothing was really expected of her. And it was just too tough of a spot. This is a much more reasonable field. And honestly, an effort in the mid 80s to low 80s, which I think is possible for her, would certainly be good enough to at least finish in the money.
Yeah, and she was also, dead last in that race. Like I said, maybe just a little bit outclassed on that day. Frankie Dettorio is going to have her right back into the spot that she wants. And drawing the 5, I think, was perfect for this horse. So definitely not one to throw out for me, the number 5, Lady Moscato. But guys, we'll move on quickly here as we got 6 races to cover. I'm going 3-5-4. Patrick's going 3-7-4. Charlie's going 3-4-5, and Noah's going 3-5-4. Guys, moving on to race number 7. It is race number 7. Race 7-11, basically, is what I was going for there. The very one stakes, going 5 furlongs on the turf for fillies and mares. Full field of 13 with one MTO, that is number 11, anonymously. So as I bring up the Equibase right now, I'll switch to picks in a second. You see the morning line favors number 4, Coffee Maker for John Velasquez and Wesley Ward. Let's see if Charlie has that horse on top. Queen of the Mud is your second choice. Flavian Pratt, Grand Motion, 3-1. Third choice is the number 8, All That Magic, a Florida bred for local based connections. I believe it is it Catherine or Karen. I'm gonna get her name right. Hold on. Give me 1 second. I will get her name right. It's Kathleen DeMasi. So I was right the second time. But either way, that's your third choice at 5-1. Guys, switching over the picks right now. I was very surprised here because, Coffee Maker is coming in off of a pretty decent layoff last Keeneland. We are all going with the same horse again, but it's the second choice this time. All going with number 1, Queen of the Mud. Wow to you, Patrick. It's coming your way. So Stalking Trip, Queen of the Mud, Grand Motion, and Flavian Pratt Masterclass ?
Yeah, I hope so. To answer that question, yeah. Listen, on debut, she did not look like she was going to be the horse that she is now, and I think even Grand Motion, kind of thought that too because he, ran this horse, last time in October at Keeneland in the fall meet, and she ran unbelievable. And then he gives her the winter off because he did say that he thought she was a good one, but then tried to enter this horse at the Keeneland spring meet and couldn't because of the weather or whatever. And now comes into this race, and I think she's the one to beat. Like I think she could be the favorite. I know the 4 is coming off a layoff, but that's designed because that's what Ward likes to do. I just think in this spot, she gets the rail, and when it comes to her speed, she's tactical. She can figure out a way through, and I think she's going to be really tough and can improve for Grand Motion, who loves to win on this circuit.
I mean, yeah, and I'll let you guys talk on Charlie. Know anything you guys want to jump in on with Queen of the Mud before we move on to our underneath horses?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can say because I'm sure. Maybe it's probably why Pat said wow, and I'm sure some of the people in our chat are a little surprised to see that I don't have the Wesley Ward horse on top, especially considering, it is the favorite, so it wouldn't be me really going out on a limb to pick the horse. But I agree with Pat. I think this horse is improving. I've kind of keyed it in the past before on horses that I've been interested in. Trying to think, who was the horse finished third in the Chili Flag race? That was a lightly raced horse that I really liked. I can't think of the name right now of the horse. I don't know why I'm blanking.
Delahaye?
That's it. Chad. Yep, that's it. Delahaye. Oh, and he froze. Dude, what are we doing here? Come on, man. Freaking up to Autobots roll out. Noah, I'll leave it to you. All right, there you go. Keep going, Charlie. Optimus Prime. Nope, now he muted himself. Are you good? All right.
Can you guys hear me? I can't hear.
Oh my God. Figure it out.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I have 1 bar Wi-Fi. I'm doing what I can here. Yeah, so I was trying to key in on that angle, and I think this horse has really improved after the debut in those last 2 efforts. In terms of the Wesley Ward horse, obviously the layoff is a little bit of a concern for me, as well as the works, quite honestly. I mean, I'm not saying this horse obviously isn't a firster, so I'm not exactly expecting her to be romped up, but these are very slow works, which for me is usually
Wesley
something
too,
where,
right? Yeah,
which scares me. And the other thing I will also say, at least that I was told from a source of mine that I trust, is this horse can kind of act up a lot on race day, but also during long travel. And I mean, the horse was able to settle down just fine and is doing well now, but can have some sort of problems in the paddock leading up to the race, and also on that traveling. And I think, now that this horse hasn't been in the rhythm of, traveling and going to all these different races, is coming off the layoff. That's just like another thing on top of the workouts to make me a little nervous. And I mean, look, it's a Wesley Ward horse in a sprint. So this horse is going to get hammered on the board, whether the horse is the favorite or second choice. The horse is easily good enough to win at her best, but there's just a lot of red flags for me. I'd rather go with the one with more upside.
Yeah, and she's 5 more. She's now 5, so that's definitely something to keep in mind as well. Last thing I want to touch on with Queen of the Mud. I know a lot of people are probably going to be wondering about Grand Motion's layoff stats with these types of horses. How about 21% with 90 of them in the money? So you're talking about half, half these starts are in the money with a 21% win rate. That's pretty good for a horse that was looking very good at the end of last year. Guys, let's continue to move through here. Patrick, I'll throw it to you, and then Noah, touch on the 7. The number 8, All That Magic for Kathleen Demasi, a horse that ran at Parks, at Monmouth last year, finishing at Aqueducts, but now coming off a little bit of a layoff for Kathleen Demasi, who, by the way, also has pretty good numbers off the layoff that'll show.
Yeah, she does. And, I don't think she realized how good this horse was going to be on turf. There is some pedigree there, but, she was, kind of struggling early on and then gets on the turf and, boom, those buyers go up and she was impressive. So, the layoff is a little bit of a concern, like we've talked about with a lot of horses in here, but this race is the most logical for this horse now. So if she's, ready to go, she could be tough too. So I think this is an interesting spot if the 1, we don't bet the 1 into the ground and the 4 coffee maker has some trouble off the layoff.
Well, now we all like the 1. Now the horse is going to be 6-5 at post time. But yeah, 5-6 at the distance, Christopher. That's a good shout at 5 furlongs. This horse is very good at 5. Only loss coming at the bog that was Parks during that. I believe that was the Pennsylvania Derby card. So that's definitely something to keep in mind there. Noah, number 7, Bosserati. Again, Brittany Russell, local connections. Another improving one that looks to go to the front and never look back.
Yeah, I think of all the races that we're covering, I think this is the one where some weird stuff can happen. Yeah. Even though, most of us have the 1 and the 4 in the top 3, obviously, it's a turf sprint. And, these 2 are coming off layoffs. The one's off since October. Coffee Maker just runs so infrequently. And even though she's had, some monster numbers, a horse like that is just really hard to trust, especially at those odds. So if you're looking for someone, to break on top and kind of take them the whole way, I think Bosserati could be one. I think I heard somewhere that last year she was the turf horse of the year for the state of Maryland or something like that. Which she obviously loves Pimlico. Once Brittany Russell put her on the turf, she just loved it. And I think if some of these other speed horses, it seems like there's a lot of speed in the race, but if some of the major players that do have speed, like Coffee Maker and a couple others, kind of don't break or are a little bothered at the start, I think Bosserati is one that could maybe take him the whole way at big odds.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you that there's some weird shit going to happen. This race is definitely a good one to keep in mind. Port Townsend, guys, is another Cherie DeVaux horse that came back at Fairgrounds, ran really well, then ran the Giants Causeway behind Roses for Deborah. Just I think another spot that was kind of just over her head a little bit. 15-1, I was a little surprised with. The 83 is not that far off of some of these horses, at least for underneath purposes. I thought the 3 Port Townsend could definitely get one with a jockey that, might be having a pretty good year. If you've heard of him with Brian Hernandez Jr. So there's just I think there's many things that, like Noah said, some weird stuff can happen at 15-1 with a horse that can make her own trip and kind of sit off the pace, third off the layoff. I think Port Townsend makes a lot of sense underneath at 15-1. I'm going 1-3-4. Patrick's going 1-4-8. So is Charlie going 1-4-8, and Noah's going 1-4-7. Guys, switching over to race number 12 here, which is the penultimate leg of this pick 6. It's the grade 3 Pimlico Special Stakes. As Dewey Fan pointed out, it used to be a grade 1. Now the grade 3 Pimlico Special Stakes. Mile and 3/16. Field of 8 gets carded in this one. Morning line favorite is a horse that you guys know is close to my heart now. Kings Barnes, Louis Saez, Todd Pletcher. Second choice, right not to be left too far behind. 8-5, Red Route 1, Joel Rosario, Steve Asmussen, and the third choice is all the way up at 8-1 with the number 4, Pyrenees, with Brian Hernandez and Cherie DeVaux. So guys, switching over the picks right now. And all of us, dude, we should play this pick 3 together, boys. If there is one, we should play this. We're all, granted, it's not very, Noah, Charlie and I were talking about this. It was just this sequence feels like it kind of has that tendency to come up chalky. if some weird stuff really doesn't happen. Like it's like first, second choice makes a whole lot of sense. And then everyone else is kind of maybe just like a half step below is what it seems like. But guys, you guys know that I've sung the praise of Kingsbarns for a long time here. Or for his 4-year-old year, starting with that race at Keeneland where blew the doors off that field. And now Charlie looks to sit a very, very favorable trip, at least in my eyes, in this spot in the Pimlico Special.
Yeah, I saw very astute Matt Miller asking if this would be a play of the day here, perhaps. Now, for me, I thought it would be too short of a price to just do on its own. But when we get into our best bets, you'll see what I think of Kingsbarns. And I will say, I think we could all kind of agree here, where while we all did have the one in the race before, like we said, it's a turf sprint, crazy shit can happen. The Wesley Ward in that race. I think we would all kind of agree out of the 2 races that we've all been on the same horse together. I think we would all agree we feel strong about Kingsbarns being the more likely winner of the 2, and we'll likely get bet down pretty hard. I love the trip. I think Kingsbarns can be right towards the front and sit just behind. I don't think there's a crazy amount of speed in this race, which is the main reason why I'm honestly kind of fading the other main horse taking money in Red Route 1, who, obviously is a very talented horse in his own right. Ran 101 and 100 in the last 2 races. He hasn't, done anything wrong, lost to Skippy Longstocking, which is nothing to be embarrassed about. But what, kind of concerned me in that race, which could be an issue here, is you see 2 back and you kind of notice a trend that when you do see those red numbers for a hot pace, Red Route 1 kind of looks even better than he already is and is able to win with that. And obviously in a race like this where there isn't as much pace, I just feel like you got to pick one of the 2 heavy favorites to kind of stick with. And I think Kingsbarns makes a lot more sense. I also think this is a horse that looked, at least in my opinion, I know it only shows a Beyer figure difference of 2 between the effort 2 back and this one, but for me, the difference in the efforts second time off the layoff and first time off the layoff were absolute night and day for me personally, visually from what I saw. I think the Kingsbarns that we saw last time out, an effort like that, or even a step forward again in a pretty nice setup, should be very tough to beat here.
I don't disagree with, and obviously none of us do, but you hit the nail on the head. We talked about this last time, and this was a Kingsbarns versus War Campaign debate. If you guys watched that show for Keeneland that we covered, that was Elkhorn Stakes Day that we covered here on Bettin N Boozin. And we had a couple hosts go with War Campaign. I think there was one person with me with Kingsbarns and 2 people with War Campaign. I mean, your point, Charlie, was exactly what my point was that day. Was I just thought second off the layoff with a little bit of, I've always thought Kingsbarns was better longer. He ran 7 furlongs in that and was still getting there. I thought 3/16s would just be miles better for him. And obviously, like you said, visually, he looked amazing in the Ben Ali. Like you said, War Campaign is probably, you can argue, who did he really beat in that race? Dynamic One, Smile Happy, their best races are behind them. But just visually, the way he did it puts me a lot of confidence in this horse. And if this horse is just going to sit an easy trip off of another horse like the number 1 Harlow Cap, I think it could be pretty done and dusted as long as he gets a really nice trip. And I completely agree with your points on Red Route 1. Because like I said, these are the 2 that are odds above the rest. I just think he needs pace. I've never been the biggest fan of his. I just feel like I can never trust him, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is whether he's, 3 lengths back or 20 lengths back, I just can never fully trust Red Route 1. And that's just something I've held since probably when he was on the Derby Trail last year. So I'm going to look to play against him in a race where there looks to be a very minute, amount of speed in this race. So I'll skip ahead. And Noah, I'm going to go to you here. Pyrenees, you have this horse in second. This is a horse that looks to take advantage of that said pace scenario. Maybe not as forwardly placed as the 2 horses I mentioned before, but one that's going to get the jump on horses like Red Route 1.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if Pyrenees is as good as the other 2, but he's pretty good right now, and he seems to be getting better. And he seems like a horse that you have to move up, especially on the slop. So if they do get some rain Friday afternoon, I think this is one you could definitely upgrade. And like you said, not a ton of speed in the race. So, if you're looking to try to get a price underneath, I think Pyrenees is maybe the horse to be that one to finish second. Last thing I'll say about the race is I think the one thing that our listeners can kind of take from this race, if you're trying to, bet with good strategy, is it doesn't make a lot of sense to have, Red Route 1 and Kings Barnes like on the same level. Like if you're playing an ABC, doesn't make any sense to try and have those two on the same, A line. It makes more sense to try to beat one, even if you're against us and you like Red Route 1, just go with Red Route 1, try and fade Kings Barnes, or even vertically try to get somebody else underneath if you're trying to find some value there.
I mean, yeah, it's vice versa, right? I mean, whether you like Red Route 1 or Kings Barnes, whether it's pace scenario or anything like that, yeah, I completely agree with you. If you're playing like a caveman ticket or ABC line, caveman ticket, if you're playing 2-5, just from a betting standpoint, you're doubling your bet on a horse that's not going to give you any extra value to double your bet, rather than playing someone like 2-4 where you have a 7-5 shot and an 8-1 shot, and you're taking that extra. Let's say like your pick 5 was originally like, let's say 36, and now you're doubling it to 72. If you have an 8-5 versus a 7-5 come in, that's not going to be worth the extra value that you're putting onto your bet originally. So I think having that 8-1 in there, I mean, if that 8-1 beats both the 7-5 and 8-5, right? That's exponential growth to what your pick 5 payout would be. So that's definitely a really good notion to talk about as well. Patrick, I'll go to you next here. Then we'll move on to the next race. The last horse we didn't talk about. Actually, I'll talk about mine after yours. But the number 8, as I switch over back to the thing, is Royal Ship. And this is a horse that a lot of people, I mean, this horse has been running forever, since 2021 at Del Mar. I'm interested to hear. He hasn't really been himself. Did run well in the California behind Defunded, but this is one that really hasn't been himself, but did get switched. I mean, is your king kind of around second off the layoff, or what'd you see with Royal Ship here?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the horse hasn't won since 2022. Ran in the Pacific Classic after the win, lost to that horse named Flightline. But I was reading an article on DRF this morning, and Graham Motion said, he's been trying to get this horse onto the track, just really a race hasn't filled and things like that. I'm putting a line right through that race on the 24th. That horse wanted nothing to do with that. I know the boss is probably looking at me like I have 10 heads, 8-year-old. I don't know. I'm getting this feeling that, this horse is going to run back to its previous races. And I think, in this spot where it's, you got Kingsbarn and then everybody else, Red Route 1 is that type of horse where it's going to come from out of it. And, they've been trying to put that horse more forwardly placed of late. So we'll see. But something tells me Royal Ship is going to run pretty big on Friday.
We're talking about second off the layoff, right? I mean, he is 8. So you're going to, for me, this is a complete one that if he does run well, then I'll take a look at it. But until he runs well again, I'm not going to have him. But again, you're looking for value. That 12-1 price could be worth it to take a shot on him underneath. Harlow Cap's the horse that I'm going 12-1 on. And if you guys are noticing a trend here with my picks, this race is very, very pace scenario dependent for me. If Harlow Cap is going to go to the lead, Asmussen's on the rail. He sees that there's not a lot of speed in this race. Maybe he sits right behind Kingsbarns. I'm assuming that Paco is going to send to the lead, have Kingsbarns sit right off. I just feel like pace scenario wise, if they go, 48, it's going to be very hard for horses like Red Route 1 to close into paces like that. So if Harlow Cap stays on for second or third, I wouldn't be surprised at all. But again, I am going with the top 3 horses from pace scenario point of view in my top 3 here. I just think Kingsbarns, if he gets a really good setup, like I think he will in here, I think he's way the horse to beat in this race. And 7-5 might even be pretty good value in a race like this. I don't think he will, because I think a lot of people will also see the pace scenario. So I think he'll be actually pretty, a little distanced away from that Red Route 1 from what the morning line says. But I do think Harlow Cap might have a chance, especially off that 89, getting back to a little bit better. Granted, I know this is a much tougher spot than what he's been running in, but just pace scenario wise, I think he's a very logical play at 12-1 underneath. I'm going 2-1-4. Patrick's going 2-8-5. Charlie's going 2-5-4. Noah's going 2-4-5. Guys, switching over to the last race. And of course, this is the featured race on the card. It's the Grade 2 Black-Eyed Susan Stakes, 1.8 mile for 3-year-old fillies. The Preakness version of the Kentucky Oaks, and draws a field of 8 with the morning line favorite that I was a little surprised on. The number 7, Corposo, 5-2. I understand running lines. We'll get into that in a little bit. The number 5 or the number 3 Lemon Muffin is your second choice, coming off a 2-week rest for Pratt and Dwayne Lucas. Number 5 Gun Song is your third choice at 9-2. Guys, switching over the picks right now, and you'll see 3 of the people are going with the number 5 Gun Song. I am the odd man out. I am going with the number 6, Who Could Ask FOMO, as I switch over to the picks right now. Noah, I'll give you first crack here with the number 5 Gun Song. This is one I'm going to show the pace scenario off first, and I'll let you talk about that, then go into Gun Song. This is complete, again, another pace play for me, but I'm interested to hear why you 3 like Gun Song the best.
Well, I don't know if I can go first because you're the Mr. Wise guy with the 6, so I think you should probably tell us why.
Host never goes first. Host never goes first. Come on.
Whatever. Gun Song. If the viewers think you're going to get 92 on Gun Song, I want what you're smoking.
I don't disagree.
There's no way she's going to be 92. And I'm going to be honest. I didn't really see what Time Form sees. This was just a race where, there wasn't anybody that really wowed me, but from a betting perspective, it's definitely a good race. And I think Gun Song's one, I don't know if she can necessarily get the distance, but if she's able to get the lead, there's no really, world beaters in here. The Gulfstream Oaks was a decent prep, I guess, but the 2 races before it, just kind of based off figs alone, just seems like if she runs back to one of those, granted, she's got to go a little bit further, I think she's going to be pretty tough to beat.
I mean, obviously, Charlie and Patrick, you guys both have this horse on top as well. And numbers-wise, I completely agree with you guys. This horse is easily the horse to beat. I do agree with it. I don't think this race is going to be slow by any means, at least up front.
Yeah,
Patrick or Charlie, whoever.
Yeah, I'll take it. I personally, and I don't know. Noah said he might like Gun Song on the lead. I honestly would like her sitting in a stalking trip. I look last out in the Oaks, Gulfstream Park Oaks. Yeah, that wasn't pretty, but it also wasn't like a disaster. And I think, she can get 2 turns. And I think Mark Henning believes that. So I'm just hoping, this sire of Gun Runner can, sit that stalking trip and, get the first jump on a horse like Who Could Ask for Mo. I wanted to like this horse, but I just can't find, there's like excuse wise, I'm just not really sure. So I've heard a lot about Gun Song, and I think she's going to be up to the task. Charlie, what else would you have to say about Gun Song?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously, again, we always talk about Noah being the West Coast bias guy, and I kind of naturally get dragged into being the Gulfstream guy. For me, this is a horse I've really enjoyed watching at Gulfstream.
Naturally dragged.
The Oaks race didn't really faze me at all, to be honest. I thought Power Squeeze got set up perfectly. I think Ways and Means is still a very talented horse. I think if you threw Ways and Means in this field, what would that horse be? So for me, I'm not really concerned. I think, like as Kyle had briefly touched on, obviously look at that 85 and 86, and those efforts are certainly good enough to win in this spot. And quite honestly, if we're just being realistic here, this field is pretty weak. I mean, when you see this is the featured race of the day, I think when you just looked off the figures and efforts, you'd be a little surprised that this is that race. But at the same time, that's what makes it exciting and makes it more intriguing a bit. I would argue sometimes it's more fun to see a field where there isn't some overwhelming horse that's going to dominate that's 6-5, and then you're like, who's fighting for second? When you can see a race where there's legitimately 5-6 horses, you could argue have a chance here. But I also will say I agree with Patrick a lot about what he said about a stalking trip. I think if Gun Song can just sit a length or 2 off the 8 horse, that would be a really nice setup, because at least if you look in the past, the 8 has shown more of an interest in trying to go for the lead. And then the other horse I want to talk about is the 7, who I have underneath, because I saw there were some people in the chat talking about the 7. And I think Corposo, and I'm curious what Noah thinks, because obviously this is his specialty now, the West Coast horse. I think this horse is kind of interesting. I mean, obviously, in Cali, they go pretty damn fast in a lot of their races. And I do kind of think this is one that obviously, again, will also be forwardly placed, but I haven't really seen anything. While it could fall apart, I don't really see anybody in this race, to me personally, outside maybe the 6, who has really shown enough where even if they could theoretically pick up the pieces, are they actually good enough to stay close enough to pick up those pieces? So that was what kind of intrigued me about the 7, is I think the 5 and 7 could sit together right off the 8 and get the first jump. And I don't know if the closers will be close enough to get to the 5 or 7.
No, I'll kind of leave that up to you if you want to take that on Corposo. I mean, you have the horse in third, so you think a little bit highly of this horse, but I think the main argument on like what I've seen on Twitter and stuff like that is this horse lost, a half length to Kinza. And what would Kinza be in this race? Is it like, that's basically, we talk about that all the time. As Charlie just brought it up, what would Ways and Means be in this race? But I mean, Kinza did a lot of the dirty work in that race. So, it's tomato, potato, whatever. It's like apples to oranges, right?
Yeah, well, 2 backs she beat Bonacqua, who's a decent filly for Baffert, who's one of those horses that just kind of doesn't really like to win. Second-itis, as you call it.
Yep.
And then, in the Santa Anita Oaks, yes, she was a half length behind Kinza, but did Kinza really show what she's capable of? It just kind of seemed like Nothing Like You just kind of ran him off her feet. So I don't, at the same point, she was close to Kinza, but at the same time, I don't know if necessarily that was her best. So I don't know if you can kind of, compare running lines like people are on Twitter. With that being said, you could take it as that race wasn't necessarily where you could see what she's capable of, and she could definitely improve off that. Yes, she definitely could. But at 5-2, definitely not, appealing to me, which is why I have her in third.
The other thing, I'm not too sure about the distance for Corposo. I mean, she ran fine. Like she ran well at a mile at Santa Anita, which of course is 2 turns, but I mean, just mile and 16, she got a pretty good trip and kind of faded pretty bad. Granting Nothing Like You won by 7.5, but in the first race, I mean, she ran 6.5, granted first time out. I just don't know the distance wise if this is going to be what's best for her. And at 5-2, and what looks to be a pretty hot pace that she's going to sit, right next to or just off of, I'd be willing to look other places. The only other horse we haven't talked about, then I'll talk about my top pick, was Recharge. Patrick, I'll throw this to you. You have this horse in third. Noah has this horse in second. I just think it might be a little bit outclassed here. I mean, ran in the fantasy, ran 5th behind Torpedo and obviously your eventual Kentucky Oaks winner, but then was at Sam Houston and was at Sunland Park, broke her maiden at Remington. So, you can argue maybe a little bit over her head.
Yeah. I mean, the first time, she faced a field with any talent, which was in the fantasy, she was pretty much eased to the wire. So it's a question. She's just very fast. And I think there's more here for this, gun runner filly. I'm hoping, Joelle can get her to the lead nice and easy from the outside post and maybe, can kind of slow up the fractions a little bit. But there's, this is another going to have to improve again. And then, the 6, Kyle, give us your spiel on the 6.
I will. And for me, Recharge is just the one that's going to basically ensure that there's a pretty decent pace in this race. I think Gunsong is probably going to want to go because there's really no one to the inside of Gunsong that, I mean, maybe the 1. I don't know if the 1's as fast. That's a local connection, obviously, for Robert Reed. But Gunsong really doesn't have anyone to her inside, so I think she's going to want to go just from a straight trip standpoint. Corposo might be the one to sit off, but I think Recharge is going to ensure that hot pace. From a complete pace scenario standpoint, I think Who Could Ask for Mo makes a ton of sense in this race. And you're getting a 4th choice on a horse that was sold for $450, gets blinkers on, which I'm hoping might keep her a little bit more engaged early in the race. I mean, ran in the Devona Dale, ran in the Gazelle, maybe just wasn't her best efforts and maybe against a little bit too much, was second to Power Squeeze back in the Suncoast at Tampa Bay, broke her maiden at Tampa Bay by a 6.5. Like you said, then that was the Fiona's Magic race where she got away with absolute murder up front. Granted, 111's not that slow, but I mean, she was by herself the entire way. Then shout out Noah who picked me and picked to finish last in the Kentucky Oaks. And then ran behind Where's My Ring, who was another, pretty well-backed horse and regulatory risk in that race, who came back to run 3rd in the Kentucky Oaks. I just think she's been facing against pretty good running line horses, which I think muddies up her form a little bit. I like the equipment change. And Jesus Christ. I think it muddies up her running lines a little bit. She's continuing to improve while still getting beat. I think if the pace scenario does heat up like I think it's going to, I think Who Could Ask for Mo is the one to reap all the benefits in that race. Minus that one, Howard pointed out that he said, I'm very astute, so thank you very much. I know I am. He said, I like this one. Race might completely fall apart. Other than Gunsong, who are you really afraid of? And I don't disagree with that point. We're talking about how, Corposo might not want the distance. Recharge is going to ensure a hot pace from the outside. Really, instead of Gunsong, there's not really too much I'm afraid of in this spot. And if the pace quickens up, I think Who Could Ask for Mo could be the one, like I said, to reap all the benefits coming for home. So that's my spiel, Christopher, on Who Could Ask for Mo. And you get Sayas here, who hopefully could sit a little bit more aggressive trip somewhere like mid-pack, not keeping her like 7-10 lengths back off of the front runners. That would be, in my opinion, not worst case scenario, because I still think there'll be a hot pace, but it wouldn't be good. I would like to see her somewhere like 4 lengths back, somewhere mid-pack, and being able to close into a hot pace. For the Black Eyed Susan, guys, I'm going 6.57. Patrick's going 6.58. Charlie's going, as I scrolls, 5.73, and Noah's going 5.87. Guys, our best bets for Black Eyed Susan Day as I take off the picks right now. For Preakness Friday, for some reason I have Noah first, so that's who's going first. I don't know why I have Noah first, but I do. Hopefully because it's going to be the best picks. 2 bets, race number 9, a double, ice cold, 2, 3, and piggybacking off that, a race 10, exacta 3 over 9. Noah, talk about your best bets.
Yeah, so starting in race 9, I think it's pretty much between Royal Winter and She Feels Pretty. And if She Feels Pretty isn't ready off the layoff, then I feel like I've got the horse. So I'm going to go with the 2 and then double with that into You Almost Had Me, who looks very logical in a spot like that. So try to get some value, trying to beat a favorite in the first leg and then going into the Brad Cox filly. And then in the same race, I've got her on top, and then I'm going to try to use the horse for the Russell connections that I think might be a little overlooked, but there's a lot of speed in the race. So, she's a little slow on paper, but I think she can improve and can clunk up for second maybe. So those are my 2 best bets.
2 words, Noah, weird shit. And it wouldn't be the first time it happens. So Good luck with your best bets, Noah. Patrick, going to you next. You're going pick 3 and a simple win bet. Pick 3 starting in race number 8. That is, of course, the first race we talked about, the DuPont Distaff. Going 4-8 in that race, that is Musical Mischief, the 2 Logicals, and Shotgun Hottie. Then with 4-6 in race number 9, which is Waves of Mischief and She Feels Pretty. And then singling the 3 in the Miss Preakness, which of course is You Almost Had Me. And in the Black Eyed Susan, a win on the number 5 Gunsong. Patrick, talk about your best bets.
Yeah, so I'm going to try and fade Julia Shining. Ideally catch 2 prices early on to get to 3, because that's what I'm trying to get with the Brad Cox horse there. You Almost Had Me. I just think early on for this sequence it's going to be pretty straightforward. So maybe favor press up a little bit with those horses, and then Gunsong. I really like that horse. I'm hoping I can get somewhat of a price on that horse at 9-2, but it's going to be tough, especially knowing others in the chat and in the group like the horse. So it's a fun card. I hope the weather holds up, and good luck to everybody else.
And like I said, Friday it does look like the weather's holding up. It looks like there's no chance of rain at all on Friday. Good. Saturday, I'll leave Paul Halloran to do the forecast, as he loves to do for Saturday. Saturday looks a lot worse than Friday, basically, is what I'm trying to say. But Patrick, good luck with your best bets. Charlie, my friend, you are learning, young Padawan. 2 doubles for Charlie Freeman on Friday. Race number 8, a double starting with number 8 in that race. That is, of course, the logical Shotgun Hottie into 2 horses in race number 9, being the 2 and the 6, Royal Winter and She Feels Pretty. Race number 11, going another double, but starting with 2 this time, Queen of the Mud and Coffee Maker into race number 12, which, of course, is Kings Barnes.
Yeah, so, as we talked about earlier, I think Shotgun Hottie is just very difficult in this spot in a pretty weak field. So I'm going to go with that horse as the one singled in the first double, going into the 2 and 6. Look, obviously, I really like She Feels Pretty, and I mean, look, that was a horse I like Breeders' Cup weekend, but the big concern, obviously, is the big layoff. Will, she be ready? If she is, she'll win. If not, at least I can cover myself. And we talk about Dutching all the time, and since I'm playing it into the favorite and then a horse that'll be a little more of a price, I can balance it out well. And I really do think the 2 is interesting. Again, I feel pretty good about kind of my sense and feel about which horses that run in Gulfstream will run well and which won't. And I really do like this 2 horse a lot. I honestly think Royal Winter, if it wasn't for how much I like She Feels Pretty in most other spots, would be a top choice of mine. And I won't say exactly what happened, but one of our co-hosts on here also told me something off air that made me really like the 2 based off of our history with a different horse. And then going into the other bet, look, I think we all kind of agree. We all have the 1 on top. That horse should be dangerous. And obviously, Kings Barnes in the last leg, to me, is the most obvious winner in our entire sequence. But I'm also going to have the Wesley Ward horse there because I did say, if all these horses are at their absolute best, the 4 is the horse to beat. I just don't know about the layoff and the questions I also told you about, the antics with this horse acting up and having to travel around and being off the big layoff. But again, trying to use the main 2 horses into the most likely winner in our sequence in Kings Barnes.
Yeah, I don't. And Charlie, you'll see something pretty close to what you got going on, which again means very astute, my friend. Good luck with your best bets. Guys, there's 2 horses that I'm trying to key in on. You guys know how this rolls by now with me. We talked about earlier how this might have the tendency to go a little chalky, but there's 2 horses that I'm trying to key my entire day around. That is and you'll see with my doubles that come up here. Race number 10, number 3, You Almost Had Me, who we all had on top, and as Charlie touched on, which is my most logical winner of the entire sequence, the number 2, Kings Barnes in race 12. Keying around both those horses in that race, I'm going to probably go a big double starting in race number 9 between She Feels Pretty and You Almost Had Me, and a smaller double, but still a pretty sizable one into Royal Winter into You Almost Had Me. I just feel like that line is very, very logical. As long as if She Feels Pretty runs off the layoff, I think that one makes a ton of sense. If not, Royal Winter with a little bit of freshening at Keeneland, I think, is the one that is going to run her down, as I talked about during that race. Again, You Almost Had Me. I think if she runs her race, that one is by far the horse to beat in that race, albeit in a field of 12. So I'm hoping I can at least get a little bit of extracted value with the field size. As I mentioned, Kings Barnes, don't need to talk too much about him. The Black Eyed Susan, guys, this is one where we touched on that adding that extra horse in there. You try to leverage the value in between the number 5 Gunsong, who I think, depending on the trip that she gets, is definitely the most likely winner on the card based on numbers alone. But if the race falls apart, I'll take the 4th or 5th choice, who could ask for more, which would be exponential in increasing those doubles for me. So these are both easily Dutchable, I think, in my opinion, which from a ticket construction standpoint can really allow you to leverage your bets throughout the entire day. And like I said, based on my best opinions, which are the number 3 in race 10 and the number 2 in race 12. But guys, that will end episode number 78 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. And again, if you want our doubles for Preakness, you might want to watch this tape show that's going to come out pretty soon here, because those are going to be where you're going to get those. But a little sneak peek for you guys. Have you guys handicapped the Preakness already? You guys know who you like?
I don't.
You don't? Patrick's ruined the fun. No. I was going to say if we want to give early Preakness picks here, but it's okay. We'll give them on the tape show. So that means everyone has to go and watch the tape show that's going to come out here soon. But guys, like I said, I see everyone in the chat. Thanks so much for joining in. Greatly appreciate it. For my co-hosts, Patrick Kunsel, Charlie Freeman, and West Coast Bias Noah Maher, this has been your host, Kyle Roscoe, in episode 78 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast, covering the All Stakes Pick 6 on Preakness Friday, also Black Eyed Susan Day. And until next time, everyone, crush those bets, win those photos, and stay safe, everyone. We'll see you in the next episode. Have a great night.